Thank you so much, Molly. That was a really kind introduction. I'm really honored to be with you all this evening. I'm grateful for the introduction and all the hard work that goes into putting this on. So thanks to Eileen and Katie and Karen and Molly and the trivia crew at the student board. I'm really honored to be here and help mark the 20th anniversary of Agape Latte here in Baptist Hall this year. Again, I guess I'd also like to say it's a gift to be invited to share not just what I know, but who I am. And so I'm Kristin Heyer. Again, I'm a theology professor here at BC. Maybe two other items of note for the talk. I was diagnosed with cancer in January of 2025, and I'm a huge Brandi Carlile fan. Hopefully you heard the music as you walked in. It's probably my first and last walk-on music, so thanks, Eileen, for making that dream come true. Okay, so last fall, my oncologist let me know that even though my active treatment had gone smoothly, that I have a high likelihood of recurrence of breast cancer. I had thought that when I rang the bell following surgery and chemo and radiation, that all of this was in the rearview mirror. So this felt like a bit of a setback. It had been an exhausting year. And even though it's an immense privilege to have access to some of the best healthcare in the world here in Boston, I'm at MGH, it was still kind of discouraging to return to an immunocompromised status and to manage all of the side effects that come with some new hefty meds for the next 7 years. So I set to work managing the side effects and making some lifestyle changes, but I also decided to make a few plans as acts of resistance against this unexpectedly longer sentence. And one of those plans involved buying a ticket to Brandi Carlile's recent concert, her second stop on the Human Tour, which was here downtown in February. Did anybody see Brandi Carlile? It's a long shot. Has anybody heard of Brandi Carlile? Okay, great. I'm going to stick with the theme for the night then. That's great. I strapped on my N95 mask and I stayed up past my new bedtime, and the concert just blew me away. And I think in part, it really hit home because her songs had become somewhat of a soundtrack for my treatment the previous year. And Brandi's title song on this new album is called Returning to Myself. And I'd say returning to myself has resonated for me as an ongoing task long before this past year. As I've navigated different periods of uncertainty, it's involved tuning into authentic commitments. And I think doing this always requires vulnerability and courage and community. For all of us, I guess, the Human Tour involves different highs and lows, pain and loss, joys and hopes. But I think for me, it's also involved reclaiming or returning to my authentic self amid times of confusion. That's also kind of marked the journey. It's involved turning down the volume on various influencers of all types and listening to that still small voice within. I would say beyond the static of the messaging of hustle culture or various authority figures, sometimes I've had a tendency to mistake my overactive inner critic for the voice of God. So even though returning to myself can be a lonely thing to do, as Brandi sings, it's not about returning to the altar of the great and mighty me. Because it's not an end in itself. It's always a reminder that we're created to give ourselves away. We're created to be in relationship. For I was born to love you, the song continues and repeats. And times of uncertainty for me have also marked times of spiritual growth. So I'd like to share two stories tonight, one from where I was sitting where most of you are, and one story from the past year. So to begin with, how many of you are seniors who are here? My seniors are over here. Okay. So way back my senior year of college, I was about to graduate, and I had no idea what I was going to do the following year, unlike roughly any other college senior in the universe ever. I think to start with, I should say I was raised with a pretty stable family life. I was grounded in a faith community that my parents founded called the Community for Bread and Justice. And I summered on the Jersey Shore. But I was often plagued by a sense of worry or pleasing authority figures, this need to defer to social norms, to be the good student, the good daughter, the good friend or girlfriend, the good Catholic. And so I think that super ego orientation made it all the harder when I got to the end of my senior year, and I didn't have a clear next step. I had majored in history, basically to get a broad liberal arts degree out of Brown, but most of my friends had kind of a clear pre-professional next step. Like they were graduating and there was an obvious job, maybe med school, law school. And at the end of the year, all of my letters of application or letters of interest to consulting firms, whatever they do, had come up empty. And so I also felt that not only didn't I know what I was going to do the next year, but I had kind of failed to find my thing in college. And again, I felt like I was the only one for whom this was happening. In the end, I took a job in the personnel management division of the Justice Department, and I thought it could help me try out a career in public interest law. This was kind of my only faintest idea because I had really enjoyed a political theory class and a constitutional law class in college. But unfortunately, when I got to DOJ, I quickly learned that wasn't for me. I would talk to a lot of attorneys there, and they would hear me out and then say, yeah, the things that you're talking about are not really what we do in law school. I mean, law school is a lot of contracts and torts, and it doesn't involve these deeper ethical questions that you keep asking. And so I kind of continued to search for what I needed to do. I would say one turning point was when I was running the Justice Department's summer law intern program. And I was at a reception in Janet Reno's office, and a 2L came up to me and asked what I was doing. And she said, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I want to practice law, but I was just so scared to get off the moving train. I can't believe that you're taking a pause. And that really stopped me in my tracks. And for the first time, it made me grateful that I didn't get on a path out of fear or careerism or somebody else's ideas of success. But it still took painfully long to figure out what was going to come next. I took a nighttime journalism class at Georgetown because I thought maybe I'd like to write op-eds. Turns out writing op-eds isn't usually your first beat when you get a journalism job. I interviewed a lot of grown-ups to figure out how they learned what they wanted to do with their lives. And then in the middle of my discernment, I got a call from my godfather from Chicago. And John patiently listened to me articulate my deepest desires, my skills, my interests. I mentioned that I was reading Commonweal magazine for fun. political theology books. And he finally said that he didn't think I should let my fear of lack of experience, my fear of learning French and German hold me back, and I should just pursue Christian ethics directly. That's what he heard me kind of leaning into. And in a way that's pretty hard to explain, when I hung up the phone that night, I experienced this path as something that I must do, like a vocation waiting for me. And I know that it sounds ridiculous to suggest that a call from God came from a call from my godfather, but I had this settled, consoling feeling after talking to him and then making, honestly, a quick trip up here to sit in on a seminar in Kearney in Christian ethics. So I quickly got applications together. It's a little absurd that I applied for PhD programs in a subject that I didn't really take particular classes in college in, and even more that some programs took a chance on me, but enough did, and I chose Boston College. It's kind of crazy to be here. I chose Boston College and I would study in Babst as a grad student, which was such a gift. At the same time, I think the challenge is to become myself in the way vocational discernment really helped me to do didn't magically end when I started my PhD program. I brought my policy interests with me from my DC days, and a lot of my fellow theology classmates found them way too practical. I was the only woman in my cohort and in many of my classes. And I would say imposter syndrome engulfed me most weeks. I mean, hard work wasn't enough to counteract the culture marked by most of my classmates who arrived with several master's degrees in tow, or to kind of resist various dynamics and egos marking the program at the time. But early on, I met and started dating another student in the program, my now husband of 25 years, Mark. And my relationship with Mark and the tiny community of friends that we forged was really essential in helping me navigate the grad program, but also helping me begin to reclaim myself. I would say our little group would meet over meals to vent and laugh and pray. We took memorable road trips to each other's weddings, and I'm still in touch with a lot of these close friends. And over the years since graduate school, they've also helped me kind of tune out the unhelpful voices and tune into my authenticity. So they've helped me to integrate practical and theological interests. They've helped me with the voices about what it means to be a good academic, what it means to be a good working mother. And I think they've also helped when the imposter syndrome has crept back in. To be honest, at a couple times in my career, I've carried around a little note card that says, "Get behind me, self-doubt," as a way of kind of framing this as the temptation that it really is. And now that I'm mentoring emerging professionals, like some of the people kindly here tonight, I've taken pains to be my whole self. I have photos of our kids in my office prominently displayed to try to counteract a lot of the messages I received early on to make my parenting invisible. And I've mentored a lot of undergrads, as Molly said, at LMU, at Santa Clara, here at BC, who've really impressed me with their own vocational discernment. Sometimes they've talked to me about pressures they felt to pursue something lucrative instead of study what they love. Sometimes I've had pretty awkward conversations at commencement, meeting parents in light of courses I've taught. Encounters like, "You're the reason that my son or daughter is doing JVC instead of getting a respectable job." And now that we are paying tuition, I do not want to minimize the financial pressures that come with expensive college educations, really expensive. But I've been so inspired over the years to watch undergraduates step out of inherited expectations, set out of social scripts, and pursue really whom they're called to be, kind of tune in to that authentic vocation. My work with a global network of Catholic ethicists, along with Father Andrea Vicini, which was founded by my friend and maybe yours, Father Jim Keenan, has taken us all around the world, including to an audience with Pope Francis a few years back on St. Patrick's Day. And it's really hard to believe that yesterday marks a year since his passing. We had a really lively and lengthy visit with Pope Francis. We shared with him some of our work, empowering colleagues from the Global South and in other kind of isolated and precarious positions. I didn't expect to both laugh and cry, and I didn't expect his jokes about whiskey and beer. But at the end of our audience with Pope Francis, he concluded by thanking us for our work and thanking us for our courage. He didn't say thank you for your service. He didn't say thank you for your orthodoxy. He said thank you for your courage. And I've really remembered that and carried that forward as a reminder to be bold, to forge new paths. I think it's also a reminder, maybe from the ultimate authority figure, to resist mistaking the false authority of others who may have self-righteous opinions for the authority and righteousness of God. God who loves us unconditionally and calls us to be ourselves. So I'd like to shift gears now and conclude with a briefer story. This time last year, I was holding classes on Zoom every 3 weeks. Those were the weeks of my chemo infusions, and it was too difficult to teach in person. The unexpected gifts of the past year's cancer journey, though, are also part of my all too human tour, and they've helped me return to myself in some new ways. It's been a season marked by fear, waiting for biopsy results, accompanying our 2 sons, struggling to get help during an allergic reaction to one of my infusions. But it's also been a season that has clarified priorities and deepened gratitude. As some of you may know, experiences of comprehensive pain have a way of just stripping you down to essentials. There's far fewer distractions from the things that really matter in life, far fewer distractions from God's presence. So the first gift of cancer that helped return me to myself amid pain and uncertainty was the gift of community. More than anything else, this past year was a year of rekindling old friendships and allowing myself to be cared for. We were surrounded by offers of help from near and from far. My 2 sons shaved their heads in solidarity as my hair fell out. People sent pajamas and playlists and more. I think of a friend who cross-stitched a kicking dancer during my surgery with the instructions to kick it that I still have. But I was also moved by outreach from people that I don't know as well. One couple from our parish just quietly brought lemon orzo soup and left it in our breezeway week after week after week. They themselves had recently experienced a health scare. We got a really thoughtful card rather, and gift basket from the Scranton University men's soccer team. And my hairdresser refused to take my payment when she took me down to a Pixie pre-shave, insisting it was a mitzvah. I've always been more comfortable taking care of other people, whether as a mom or a wife or a mentor or grad director, only child. But after, I think, 3 requests, I allowed a doctoral student to kickstart a meal train for us. And I think those meals and rides that people gave me to radiation, different procedures, allowed friends and colleagues to accompany me in more ways than one. Beyond his huge support on the home front and his weekly sourdough, I would say my husband Mark's gallows humor got me through some tough appointments. It definitely made some of our doctors uncomfortable, but I think humor has really been essential to this journey. So grounding myself in these concrete signs of love helped not only amid the pain and isolation of treatment, but it also helped return me to myself amid ongoing social pressures, even in the cancer domain. People were not shy about their grand theories about my diagnosis. And in another encounter, I was being fitted for a cold cap. A cold cap is a device that lets some patients keep their hair during chemo. And this oncology nurse, who was decked out in pink scrubs with all these empowering survival logos all over them, was very eager for the cold cap. And I decided that I didn't want the cold cap. And so she said, well, if you're not going to do that, you're going to need to get a prescription for a wig before you leave. And then I told her that I didn't want that either. And she was very confused and a little annoyed. And I think it just struck me that even in the halls of MGH, that I would have to kind of deal with pressures of a beauty standard, a feminine beauty standard, when there are plenty of other indignities with cancer. So I don't know, laughing about this with friends, getting baseball hats and beanies in the mail certainly helped, but kind of the need to return to myself even amid treatment persisted. I would say making time to enjoy those friendships has been one ongoing gift of cancer. And I think that probably sounds odd because many of you live in close proximity to your closest friends. But this group is about to graduate. And I think as the pressures of career and parenting, in our case, we made several moves, mount, it can be harder to sustain friendships. I think it takes time and it takes commitment. And so my experience this past year has really returned me to how essential it is to make time for friendships. Another gift came in the form of completely failing at hobbies. I thought that since I had several periods of recovery time, I should try to take up some easy hobbies. It was a bust. I tried various arts and crafts. I tried bird watching. I would put together a puzzle and then wonder why the point was just to break it all up and put it back in the box at the end of putting together a puzzle. And so in the midst of this, I got a call, or an email rather, halfway through chemo from a colleague in New York who didn't know of my diagnosis. And she was putting together a conference and was worried her panelists were all Western Europeans. And could I help suggest some names of scholars in the area from the Global South to help diversify her panel. And so I wrote back a pretty long list of names, but I said, I'm having some difficult side effects from chemo, so I can't look up all of their email addresses for you. She wrote back almost immediately, appalled that I had answered her email, invoking St. Teresa, the patron of healers of the sick and theologians, and suggesting that I stop working and get some rest. But I think that intervention made me realize how much I had missed other aspects of my vocation. New hobbies just couldn't compete. And so I think embracing the depth of meaning that I find in my career was really liberating. And I started dreaming up an immigration conference that Maddie and I and others held on campus in February from the isolation of my recliner. Certainly, I think it would still be healthy to get some hobbies. I mean, we're about to be empty nesters. I think I could pick up some hobbies. And it's important to remember that I'm worthy of rest, even in times of health. But what a gift to miss meaningful work and my community of colleagues. So in these and other ways, I grew closer to God during treatment. In weekly living room liturgies, generously celebrated by Jesuit friends who are here right now, I felt like I was hearing readings about suffering and healing in fresh ways. I became newly attuned to praying for people in chronic pain, people living with uncertain prognoses, people without the great health care and community support system that I had. I think, though, most of all, living with uncertainty going forward has deepened my dependence on God, come what may. I think it's been a reminder to resist idols of control, idols of certainty, which are perennial temptations for perfectionists. I think it's been a helpful reminder that, like everybody else, I'm only human. Knowing of his own bouts with cancer, I had Father Greg Boyle's latest book, Cherished Belonging, with me in several waiting rooms. 3 or 4 of the students in this room are reading it for me for tomorrow's class. It's kind of double dipping is what we call that. But I think hopefully they would agree that like some of the mystics and the homies, as Father Greg calls them, help the reader return to herself or return to himself. And I think I felt so grounded by Boyle's reminders of who God is, and so held by different communities of care, that I really did feel a lot of serenity moving toward that initial diagnosis and at a lot of other steps along the treatment way. I told Father Greg when he was on campus last spring that he was part of my spiritual care team. And he showed up for our son Owen after a book talk at the University of Scranton later last fall. Our son Luke's transparency, I would say, also really helped me confront the risks and the wins of cancer. His absolute lack of filter is pretty refreshing in what I've found to be grief-averse cultures and pain-averse cultures. So, when Brandi Carlile sang Human in TD Garden in February, it honestly felt like quasi-spiritual direction. At least I experienced her as telling me things that I really needed to hear, channeling things. She shared a message that I feel confident that God desires. Cut yourself a little more slack. They don't make awards for that. Reminding of me of my finitude, including my new limits. And her different modes of reminding us to be human channeled the gifts of cancer, recenter what matters, loved ones, meaningful work, time to feel our face in the sun. I can remember my actual spiritual director asking me a few years ago when I was talking about some struggles at work following the deaths of my parents, Kristin, who does God want you to be? And I remember I had to take a beat before answering myself. And he agreed. But I think being ourselves is not always easy amid uncertainties and amid the crush of expectations. Brandi's live rendition of her first major hit, called The Story, apparently of Grey's Anatomy fame, off her 2007 album. Anyway, her live rendition of that blew me away. If you know the story, it starts out at this kind of intimate, acoustic, almost vulnerable level, and then it shifts to an explosive, wailing power ballad. I assume that that's everybody's favorite part. And experiencing that live was unforgettable. I visit my little iPhone clip of it regularly. I think certainly I can relate to that song. The lines across my face tell you the story of where I've been. Maybe my chemo curls tell you the story of where I've been. But her "It's True, I Was Made for You" reminds me, as cancer did, as career confusion did, that we're made for God, that we're restless for God, and God returns us to ourselves if we have the courage to pause and deeply listen. And then returning of ourselves, we can give ourselves away more freely. As she writes, let me break myself apart instead and scatter to my birds, like a burial of sea to be the gospel without words. At the concert, she took requests from the stage, like from all over TD Garden, not just people who got really good seats. And some of the requests were clearly not on their set list, and some of them were really deep cuts. And she would confer with her bandmates, call out the key, and then just perform. And at one point she said to the crowd, "This is terrifying." And then she challenged the crowd to do one thing every week that scares the heck out of you. She did not say heck. And so I'd like to leave that with you, whether from Pope Francis or Brandi Carlile, because I think courage and vulnerability are essential to returning us to ourselves again and again. Thanks.